Thank you for being here. Unfortunately, there's no microphone, so we're just going to have to gather around as family and friends and listen as best we can. So glad that you're here. So glad that you've come and shown your love to this family of this incredible man. So thank you for being here. There's food. Please don't leave without eating something. That is your task. And so we're just going to take a moment and before we start, and we're going to pray. So please pray with me. God who creates and recreates us, God who laughs with us, and God who weeps with us. God who walks with us each step of the way, carrying us when our strength fails. We gather today with hearts breaking with grief, with voices crying out words of lament. And so we would ask that you would move in and around us today as we gather to remember and to say goodbye to Bill. Be the shoulder we can cry on, the arm we can lean on. Help us to see through the veil of tears that there is hope for life continuing. Gracious God, as mysterious and wondrous as you are also compassionate God. We come into your presence to grieve Bill's death, asking that the Holy Spirit would be there to ease our pain. As we give thanks for all that he added to our lives and those of the lives around him, as we release our tears and anger, as we say our goodbyes, remind us that we are never alone. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Kirk Nips. I'm the oldest son. I'm also the oldest grandson. So you can imagine how popular I was until my sister came along. So on behalf of Mimi and the rest of the Bills family, we'd like to thank you for joining and celebrating our pops. The last 10 weeks have been quite a ride, and we've certainly been grieved like never before. We've also been reminded on how blessed we are to have been part of Bill's life. We have also been absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of love and support that we have received from all of you, our extended families and friends. I'm not sure how we could have made it here today without your visits, the meals, the messages, your cards and flowers, and countless other acts of kindness that you have shown to our family. From the bottom of our hearts, we thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kelly. I am number 3. The second daughter. Not the favorite, though. Is that what I was supposed to say? She wrote it. She wrote it for me. Asking anyone to prepare words that capture a lifelong friendship and memories is always a difficult ask. But we have invited 2 gentlemen to do just that. The first is someone that we've known so long, my whole life. He is simply known as Uncle Dan Dorr.
Bill would be happy today and he'd be sad today. He'd be sad because he would have rather had this celebration on his birthday, which was yesterday. So obviously, Mimi.
I know.
Yeah. Look in the mirror when you get home. You know, you may be looking around the front. Wow. You know, I've had the privilege or the whatever, you know, delivering more eulogies or words of condolence than I really care to remember. And the sad thing for me is, at our ages, these things keep getting closer and closer together. And it used to be that you went to a funeral every 5 to 10 years. Well, now it seems we're going to a funeral every 6 months. So I don't know if that means anything, but it scares the bejesus out of me. I've been Bill's friend for probably 53 years. And I would offer to you, Marianne, Kirk, Caden, Kelly, Who did I capture?
Hey.
The
By the way,
other daughter.
and Kim, Jen, Greg. Is that right? Sarah, sorry. I said that somebody asked me earlier, I said, I know the kids, but I don't know any of the grandkids by name, so I don't know what that means, but when I heard today that Bill was a great grandparent, I thought, holy shit, I mean, I offer you guys my deepest sympathies. You know how much I love your dad and your husband. And when Mimi asked me to say a few words at this memorial, I tried to demur and politely say no, as I'd already delivered enough eulogies in my life, and I get very emotional and very sad. And today is supposed to be a celebration of life rather than of one's passing. So I thought to myself, no, I have to say something. If I wanted the last word with Bill Nips, this would give me the opportunity to have the last word. Tough luck, Billy boy. The problem I have today is there is so much material that Bill gave us, I don't know where to start. Bill was a big guy, both physically, literally, and figuratively. And my stories really abound. But then again, there are a lot of stories that remain out of bounds. Because we were not always
Inbound.
we were not always within the line. So maybe we'll just leave those apart. But as I said,
You could leave those to my Christmas letter.
well, I think I'll write your letter this year. I read the same letter every year. My grandchildren went to Harvard. This one got a this one is now 100% self-sufficient. You know, and I think, yeah, right, Mimi, enough is enough. You know, just recycle a couple of these buckets. But as I said, there was always these really fine, fun memories, which bring a smile to my face and sadness to my heart, knowing that my best friend, Bill, is only with us now in spirit, not in body. We all know that Bill died unexpectedly at Marco Island, and nobody saw it coming. But it was also typical of Bill, the first to know and the last to tell anybody. So I'm angry at Bill in some respects for not sending a message or giving any indication that he wasn't feeling well. But then as I reflect on it, I say, how can you be angry with a guy that you spent countless hours, days, and months with over a 50-year time frame? So you see the conundrum. 50 years. How do you condense this into 6 to 8 minutes and just attempt to offer a snippet of Bill's life? So I call this the first 50 years of our friendship. Afterwards, Joel Lee, Bill's best friend as well, is going to offer his reflections on their business relationships. I left that to him because that was beyond my scope of responsibility. Yeah, Joel's more responsible than I am. I met Bill in the early 70s. At the time, he was working for his dad, Joe. Bill was the consummate sales guy. Bill always carried 3x5 index cards for note-taking. He always put them into his pressed, starched, white shirt breast pocket. Once in a while, he'd share what those notes say, and they had nothing whatsoever to do with what he was doing, but he wanted to capture a thought. So I remember these damn things. You know, Maybe he got them at Winkies or someplace, but by the dozens. Bill's word was his bond. And what Bill said he was going to do, he did. And that's a trait that I think is not often witnessed today. At the time, Bill was a strapping, maybe 175 pounds when we first met, and he always drove a Cadillac. And much to my chagrin, I thought, how can two guys our age afford to drive a Caddy? But he did. I think he had that guy, what's his name, Daniil Cadillac in his pocket because he got a new one damn near every year. No, whatever the guy's name.
No doubt.
No doubt. Read no doubt. We really fast became friends, both professionally and socially. And Bill introduced me to Mimi, that dimple-smiled woman. And then, after a trial friendship between the Nimps family and the Dorr family, we became inseparable for the next 5 decades. On one of our earliest meetings, Bill brought into my office a huge sheet cake which depicted a new factory which my brothers and I were building in Grafton. He didn't have to do this, but he was simply being Bill and was sharing his excitement over our starting of a new business, something that I will always treasure. And again, his enduring friendship showed through. And again, as I mentioned earlier, after a test friendship with the Nimpses, we decided it was time to travel with Bill and Mimi. And in that 50-year span of time, we never once had an argument in our travels. Never once. Of course, with the exception of the last time. We were coming back from Chicago. We were coming back from wherever the hell we were, and we had a driver. And he was going to take us from the airport back to Mequon. And Bill and I had a huge argument as to how the hell to get from O'Hare Field to Mequon. We got 2 grown guys who lived in Mequon. Couldn't agree how to get here. In 50 years' time, I think that's the only time we ever had cross words with one another. Do you remember this? I said, let me out at the Harvey, Fred Harvey's. I'll take a, before Uber, I'll take an Uber. You know, suffice it to say that the 4 of us, the Nimps and the Doors, spent a lot of time together. A lot of time in Door County playing tennis, water skiing, snowmobiling, and trying to convince Mimi that there was such a thing as winter apples while we snowmobiled through the frozen tundra in the dead of winter. Bill would see an apple that wasn't picked on the tree and point to Mimi, see Mimi? Winter apples. I told you they're here. Summer always brought boating and barbecues. And Bill always cooked. And no matter how you liked your steak, you always got it rare. As Bill would say, pull out its horns, slap it on its ass, and put it on the plate. That's the way he liked it. We drank old fashions, Manhattans, martinis,
Anything with booze.
anything with booze, and Bill perpetually carried his rum-soaked crooks that stunk to high heaven. And eventually, the 4 of us started to travel internationally with our first trip to Ocho Rios, Jamaica, where Bill had rented a house. I think it was Senator Johnson's house.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, that Wisconsin guy.
Yeah, right.
Bill, being the ever smart one, took the room with the bars on the window and the locks on the door. Master bedroom. As our room was robbed one night and our cash was taken. I think that Bill and Mimi slept through most of it. But then again, I do remember Bill in his tighty-whities chasing a greased-up local Jamaican in the backyard in an attempt to recover our cash. We were not successful. It's the same trip that Bill took a golf bag. And while he didn't golf, it was loaded with frozen steaks. We bypassed customs. Never starve. But it goes to show the foresight that Bill had. Bringing in steaks, circumventing the law. What can you say? We dined, we danced, we watched the crab races, all while under the stars listening to a guy named Archie Lewis, Jamaica's Frank Sinatra. A trip I have found fond memories of, from climbing Dunn's River Falls to the Playboy Club to the Fern Gully Road to the farmers markets. There wasn't a thing on that trip we didn't miss, except my cash.
I'll give it to you.
Well, we have had some inflation. But as our friendship matured and grew, so did Bill's professional career. He eventually left his dad's Joe's business and started his own, Badger American Industries. Always the confident one, always looking forward, and never looking back. Bill had words with Joe back then, but Bill, independent guy he was, plowed on and became, in his own right, an extremely successful manufacturer's rep. And as Bill became more successful, so did Mimi. She now had her own caddy and moved into her own mini farm in Mequon.
It was used.
Pre-owned. Imagine this 4'11" in a big Coupe de Ville.
That's what I said.
Our trips together became more grand in nature. Again, not me, but Bill, being the planner, planned a trip to Africa for the four of us. Almost 3 weeks of tight quarters and togetherness, and again, nary a cross word was mentioned. Bill had this trip planned to a T, from Chicago to Frankfurt to Nairobi to Cape Town to Johannesburg to the Serengeti, where we spent 7 days in our own personalized tented community. We had our own cooks, laundry people, spotters, baboons jumping from trees, a retinue of helpers. We saw everything there was to see there. It was a great trip. I remember one example of a mother hippo giving birth in a dirty stream. We were watching this happen. And the guide said, maybe you should back up a little bit because the mother might get a little pissed and charge you. Well, immediately, Mimi ran up the bank, jumped in the Jeep, locked the doors, closed the windows, and left the three of us outside. Everybody's on their own. Now you imagine, she thinks that this is going to be a great defense against a charging hippo. We kill more people in Africa than any other animal. Thank you very kindly. I remember this.
You survived.
Yes, I did. That night, it was cocktails overlooking the Serengeti. If you've been there, you know what a marvelous sight that is. It's a trip that our two families talked about many times afterwards. And today, I still have the 5 bound photo albums that Mimi put together for the rest of us. Thank you. I still look at them once in a while, not as often anymore. But I remember how fortunate we were to be together for such a long period of time. And yes, Bill planned it all. The only thing he forgot on a 3-week or 3.5-week trip was a necktie, which was required to be worn during dinner in the Robles Rail that went from Johannesburg up to Cape Victoria or someplace. Well, again, Bill, being the ever resourceful guy, took out a shoelace, tied it around his neck, put a paperclip on as a tie tack, and he came to dinner. Meanwhile, my wife and Mimi were stuffing all the sterling silver coffee pots and forks in their purses to take home as remembrance. I tried to convince them that there was a guest store on the train, but this apparently was cheap.
I still have it.
But damn, this thing, so do I. Tarnished, but
Katie left it to you and Bill left it to me. So here we are, Dan, with all this silver.
you want to do this? Thank you. No, I appreciate the audience. That trip was followed by a number of trips to Colorado. Always our own special foursome. Always Bill in the lead. Then there were the trips that we took to the Bahamas aboard Lad, a motor yacht that my brother Chris and I owned. And I want you to imagine this. On the aft deck, there were 4 club chairs facing one another. And next to one of those club chairs was a refrigerator. That refrigerator contained Bill's beer. And all he had to do was lean to his left, open the door, crack open a can, the stewardess would bring a frosted glass, pour the beer for him, and he'd be in heaven. We all were. But I caution you, you never sat in Bill's chair. He would give you that look. Not say a word, but you knew, sit someplace else. Mimi couldn't figure out what he was saying. I said, Marty, means get up. And I'm the owner of the boat, and I couldn't sit in there. But he was a happy guy. We fished, we ate fresh conch, mahi, lobster, and drank the best liquors available. We were living the high life. Mimi with her Tanqueray and tonic, Bill with whatever was his drink of the day. That's not to say that there weren't some rough stops along the way. Bill trying to convince Mimi to move to Hawaii. And then when that didn't
By
work,
myself.
he couldn't convince her to do that. He wanted her to go to Orlando. But ultimately, a divorce. All the while, remaining best of friends and marrying others. Divorcing, and then again remarrying each other while on a family whitewater rafting trip down the Middle Fork of the San Juan. Bill knew that he was going to again ask Mimi to marry him. And he told her that he'd let her know the day that their second wedding would take place. He suggested to her, when I tell you, you wear the pink shirt, that'll be the sign. For 7 days, Mimi asked, is today the day I can have on the pink shirt?
Can I at least do my hair?
Bill would say no until the last day of the trip. He said, Mimi, today's the day, wear it. And that was a magical end to another trip on the banks of the Salmon with you and Bill and your kids. Bill was a stellar guy, the best friend one could have. When in 2000, I was taken ill and ended up in the hospital for almost 2 weeks. Bill came to see me every day. Not every other day, every day. Considering that I was in 4 different hospitals, that's something that friends do, best friends do. Bill never abandoned me. Bill was there for me, my wife, my kids who are here today, to pay tribute to you and your family, Mimi. And I said earlier, it's hard to limit one's remarks to merely a snapshot of Bill's life. For as I said initially, there are more material than one day would permit. So I would simply want to say to my friend Bill, I love you, I miss you, and will always remember you as my best friend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for keeping that PG. That was awesome. Thank you, Dan, for your kind words. They mean a lot to all of us. And now I would like to introduce a man who has walked alongside Bill in so many facets of their life. They've had numerous business adventures together. He and Arlene have traveled extensively with Bill and Mimi as well, and their friendship is an absolute treasure to the entire Nips family. Please welcome Mr. Joel.
It was fantastic. I had given only one eulogy before in my life for another dear friend. I had an asthma attack and put me in a tub. And after about 2 hours, they bailed me out. I was able to get up and do it. So I hope nothing like that happens to them. For any of you that are tired of standing, move around a little bit. You're not going to bother me at all, especially you ladies against the wall. It's a tough thing in those deals, make sure. I haven't known Bill as long as Dan. I've known him for about 45 years. We met at the Milwaukee Athletic Club. We took our daughters to father-daughter dinner dances. And at the risk of trying to put this in perspective very quickly, the MAC had a club in the morning called the Early Morning Horses Ass Club, the MACs. A bunch of the worst reprobates that the city had to offer, but that's just the way it was. And taking our daughters to the father-daughter dinner dances was a highlight for Bill all the time. Now, to get in this club, you had to have a letter from your wife or girlfriend as to why you were a horse's ass. Nobody ever came without a proper letter, and very few people got rejected. So Bill was a member for many, many years, and made it to be Horse's Ass of the Year one year, which gives you a toilet seat with your picture in it. I don't know if he saved that or not.
He did.
It's
in his master plan.
I will tell you, he earned it. I'm going to skip over a lot of that and just kind of condense it because it's not PG. And I saw some young people in there and I don't even want to even think about them. In about the 1990s, when Bill was on his own, he was a very successful manufacturer's rep. From time to time, he needed a lawyer and some business advice. And that's how our relationship changed from the early morning to more of a business nature. And Dan said something that is very, very true and very remarkable, especially when you've made a living practicing law. Bill Niven was a totally honorable person. And in my practice over the years, you can find people who want to do wrong things, and you can make them do the right thing. But you never had that problem with Bill Niven. He didn't do anything wrong. What you saw was what you got, 100%. And I can't say that about too many people I've known in my life. And people say, well, how do you stay friends for that many years? There's got to be a quality in somebody that appeals to you, that you find is unique and worthwhile, and that you, even though you probably never say it to that person, is something that you just relate to. And I tried to think of what that was with Bill Nims, and while I was preparing this talk, I came up with it. And it was one word: kindness. Bill Nims was an absolutely kind human being. Whoever he treated, whoever he dealt with, that's where he was coming from. It's not how am I going to get you. It's how am I going to be kind to you? How am I going to help you? The first business I got involved with Bill Nims was when Alan Bradley was looking for somebody to buy a plating operation that they owned that they wanted to get rid of. There probably were 50 people that Alan Bradley did business with in this town that they could have picked up the phone and they would have said, when do we have to be there? Who did they go to? They went to Bill Nims because they valued this business. They valued Bill's skills as a manufacturer's rep. And they said, Bill, if you can figure out how to buy this, we want you to buy it. He came to me, we got that put together. Today, I see a couple of the first employees of that business here out of respect for Bill. Now, why was that? Well, there were 60 people working that plating operation. Bill made it his business to know everyone. Bill made it his business. This is not stuff I would have done. I'll tell you right outright. I didn't think about stuff like that. He made sure there was a pizza party on the anniversary every year. He made sure if any of them had a family problem, what could he do to help solve that family problem? If I tell you he knew the names of 50 of those people, I'm not exaggerating. He probably knew more. But I'm sure there were guys I didn't even know that he didn't know their name maybe because they'd only been there a short time. Alan Bradley was so pleased with what Bill Nims did with that little company that 5 years later they gave him a chance to buy a company that was 10 times as big. And they said, Bill, if you'll do it, we want to sell it to you. Now, where do you find a manufacturer's rep earning the respect of top executives of one of Milwaukee's biggest companies saying, if you'll do this, Bill, because they knew he would never lie to them, he would never do anything to disrespect their reputation. I don't know how to say that, but it's just remarkable. Anyway, we had these two companies, and we bought the second one. It was so big, and believe me, I don't know anything about manufacturing anything. I have trouble screwing light bulbs and things like that. But this company was called Accutech, and what did Bill say? He said, we should have a board of directors. I said, you're probably right, Bill. Who should we get? He said, well, I'll get somebody and you get somebody. Enter Dan Dorr. Now, our board meetings were at the Anchorage in the restaurant. And he says, well, who do you know? And I said, well, at that time, one of my tennis partners was Jeff Bluestein from Harley Davidson, who was the CEO. I said, I don't know if Jeff would do it, but I'll ask him. So we go to our first board meeting, and we got Dan Dorr, and they're looking and saying, what are we doing here? And who's going to pick up the check? Anyway, that situation continued, and we had these two gentlemen on our board for a long time. Companies were successful. Mike Wacker was a partner and a long-term friend of Bill's, and that was an experience. Now, in an effort to get back at Dan Dorr and a lot of his snide comments, I want to tell you about an experience I had with Bill. My wife and I were asked to chair the American Cancer Society event in Milwaukee, an event that raised about $500,000 a year. Well, we're not, members of wealthy social circles or things like that. So we said, well, I don't know how we're going to pull this off. So I said, the first guy bringing in is Bill Nims, because he's the best salesman I know. So we go get Bill Nims, and he says, I think we should have a raffle. Okay, what do you think, Bill? He says, well, we'll sell 900 tickets at $100 a piece. We'll buy a Porsche Boxster and we'll raise a net, because the car costs $50,000 just on that. I said, well, that's a good start. So we set up a raffle, and Bill takes his tickets, and he takes 100 tickets and he gives them to Dan Dorr. And he says, let's sell tickets. So the first night we see Bill and Dan, they're in a restaurant, the Range Line Inn. And Bill's walking around, and his tickets are all gone. He sold 150 tickets at the Range Line Inn. Dan Dorr is sitting there, he's got all his tickets in his pocket. He says, Arlene, I don't want to do this. He says, can I call you tomorrow? And Arlene said, well, sure, Dan. He calls the next day, he says, I have a proposition for you. How about I buy the box and donate it to the charity? And then you sell the rest of the tickets, and now, you know, all the money will be profitable. He says, and I don't have to sell the tickets. Arlene looked at me and she says, is he for real? I don't know, you better go ask him. So he calls Arlene and says, is this okay with you? And she says, yeah, I'll be fine. He says, can I turn in my tickets now? So that was one experience with Bill Nims and salesmanship, and the event was a huge success, and we thank you, Dan, for your help. The other Bill Nims occasion is, to me, one that's very personal. I'm very much involved with an organization called Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We have been for 30 years. And as opposed to Boys and Girls Club, they mentor distressed kids one at a time. Boys and Girls Club puts on big events for large groups of people. NFL alumni came to Milwaukee, and I had a couple of clients who were ex-NFL players. And they said, we want to pick a charity in Milwaukee that needs recognition. I said, well, Big Brothers, Big Sisters would be a good one, because they don't get the recognition they need and they do good work. Long story short, that charity's been going on for 30 years now, and it's sold out every year, and it's raised over $4 million for Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And I called in Bill Nims, because, you know, you get a golf tournament started, you got to have 30 teams, you got to have 5 guys on a team. You got, first thing Bill Nims does, goes over to Alan Bradley and says, you guys got to put together 7 teams. We need support to start this. Alan Bradley put together 7 teams. Bill goes to Leeson Electric, which is the Dorr family. He says, I need somebody to pay for all the golf balls. Leeson Electric puts their name in. By the way, I saved 3 golf balls since the first event in 1990, and when we're done here, I never knew what I was going to do with them, but one for you and one for each of the doors. I had them in my drawer. And we put on a successful golf event. Once again, it's just Bill Nims doing things for people. It's part of his life. He never was too much of a chore if the end result was helping somebody out. I don't know how to say it better, but as I said before, kindness, I think, was the virtue that I will always remember about Bill Nims, because it was kindness to his friends, it was kindness to people he didn't even know, it was just being kind to humanity. And that's the way I'll always remember Bill. And as Dan said, you couldn't ask for a better friend. And I'll never forget Bill. Now, as I look at this table, I read a little joke the other day, just reminded me of Bill. There was a cafeteria table, and there was little kids walking by, and there was a big bowl of apples at the table. And it said, take 1 apple. God is watching. And at the end, there were a big tray of cookies. And some little kid had written, take all the cookies you want. God is watching the apples. and I thought to myself, if cookies are a metaphor for life, the good things in life, Bill Nims would say to all of you, take all the cookies you want. I'll be helping God watch them.
Your kind words. and all of those memories. We all have memories of Pops along the way. This next speaker needs no introduction.
Wow.
It's all you, Kaven.
Well, just in case I do, I'm Caden. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Caven. I'm the youngest of Bill and Mimi's 4 kids. And I wanted to start and kind of echo what Kirk had said and just speaking on behalf of the family and expressing our incredible gratitude at the outpouring of love that we've experienced over the last 2.5 months. And Bill was so loved by the people in this room. He's telling me to speak up. And that love we felt from you has really helped as we've learned to cope with his passing and his absence and the void that he's left behind. Before I go any further, I do want to introduce my understudy, my beautiful wife, Sierra. If I can't continue, I'm going to hand her these words, and she's going to continue on the role of Caven. So that's her in the green dress. I'm here speaking before you as the result of a very democratic process, what I'm sure was a very democratic process through which one of us was chosen to represent the family. I'm told that there were straws involved. I'm told that I had the straw that was shortest in stature, which is not a surprise. I'm 5'9". I can't attest to any of this. I was in Denver when this meeting allegedly took place. But my brother and sisters, being good and honest people, I take them at their word. And I say, I'd like to share a few lessons that I learned from my dad. There were many, and some of them are silly and frivolous. Others are timely and highly relevant. For example, this first one is going to fall in the timely and highly relevant category. It's also silly and frivolous, so maybe it checks all the boxes. My dad was a great speaker, and he was asked to speak all the time, right? Which toasts, speeches, of course, included funerals, and it always made me so proud to watch my dad speak. But I also remember watching him give eulogies and thinking to myself, kind of stinks. You know, he just lost one of his best friends, and here he is 3 days later. He's having to give a talk about it. It's got to be funny, but not too funny. It's got to be sentimental, but not too sappy. And it's got to do all this in 6 to 8 minutes or less. And I just remember thinking, that's tough. I don't know if I like that. And I also remember thinking to myself, if he had just been maybe a little more foresighted, maybe a little more selfish. I'm the youngest, so selfish thoughts come naturally. If he had just been a little more selfish, if he had just properly bombed that first eulogy, there would have been no more future eulogies. There's very little incentive to really knock it out of the park with a eulogy because your reward is going to be more eulogies. So lesson number 1 that I learned from Bill Nims is don't overachieve with your eulogy. It's okay to be average. It's okay not to be exceptional in this space. So allow me to demonstrate what that looks like. Lesson number 2. There are ways to ensure that your kids will get a return on their college investment if you're bold enough to try them. So I hear a lot of parents, they complain about the rising cost of college. They talk about diminishing returns on that investment. And this is especially pronounced. You send your kid off to some fancy East Coast private school and they come back with a degree in mid-century Asian literature. And they find that there's not a ripe job market for people with such a degree. This is entirely avoidable. I hope I didn't insult it. A lot of mid-century Asian literature majors out there. Yeah. As I was leaving for Boulder, my dad had these wise words for me. David, you're going to a tremendous school. Maybe not tremendous, that's a strong word, but you're going to a fine institution. You can study whatever you want. The school has 1,000 majors. The world is your oyster. But if you want a single dollar of financial support from me, you will study business or engineering. Those are your choices. Good luck. And I remember saying in a whiny voice, but Dad, I love history. He said, that's great. Go out and get a library card. You can get those for free. Go check out some history books. You can do that for free as well. But you're at school to get a better job. Don't ever lose sight of why you're there.
Bill Nimps knew how to get a return on his investment. Lesson number 3, talk to your kids about business, or whatever your work is, whatever you're passionate about. If you're concerned that your kid's obsession with social media, teenage love interests, and making TikTok videos is not going to translate to career success, you're probably right. But try talking to your kids about your work. This may come as a surprise, but my dad and I did not have the go throw the ball in the backyard kind of relationship. When we did play sports, it was usually him trying to teach me how to shoot a skyhook. I don't know what it is with older white men and their infatuation with the skyhook, but my dad was obsessed with a properly executed skyhook, and that it was missing from the modern basketball game. My dad and I didn't play sports together. We talked business. He would describe a scenario that he was dealing with. He would ask me what I would do. I would give the world's dumbest response, and he would very slowly and patiently explain to me how that wasn't a very good answer. There might be unintended consequences. It was an endless masterclass in leadership and management, and from one of the best professors in the game. I miss those talks a lot. I recently had something come up in my career that I was excited about, I was proud of, and I almost couldn't enjoy it because the only thing I could think about is how I wish he'd been there and how that stuff made him so proud. Lesson number 4, buy high-quality items that have lifetime warranties. Some of you may have noticed that my dad seemed to wear the same pair of Mephisto sandals for what seemed like the last 15 years of his life. You may have even wondered to yourself, either in your head or out loud, how does one wear sandals for 5,000 consecutive days without them just disintegrating? How does that happen? What you don't know is that those poor suckers at Mephisto put lifetime warranties on them. So as soon as the stitching would inevitably start to fail, Bill would send it back for a new pair. And so while it may have seemed indulgent at the time to spend $300 on a pair of sandals, the daily cost amortized over the 15-year life of those sandals amounted to just over 1 nickel per day. And that, my friends, is a very solid shoe strategy for me. Actually, I don't know if you noticed, but that beautiful bouquet right there on the table is from Mephisto corporate headquarters. If you read the note that's attached, it simply reads, to a very worthy adversary, may you finally rest in peace. And the warranty is non-transferable, Kirk. I'm just kidding. I think they're from the Messinos, and they're beautiful. Thank you. Lesson number 5, find things you love and go all in. There are 2 schools of thought on this. There are people that think that variety is the spice of life, and then there's Bill Nimps. Dad went through phases where he was absolutely obsessed over things, right? And depending on what the season of life was, this may have been Cave Creek chili beer, it could have been Schwarz's beer, Arturo Fuente cigars. He went through this weird phase in the mid-'80s where it was chocolate mousse, graham cracker crust pies, macadamia nuts, caramel M&Ms. You'll notice he was not consulting with a dietitian on any of these choices. As we were cleaning out his things in Florida, we found gallon-sized Ziploc bags of caramel M&Ms in his glove compartment, in his center console. They were like chewy because it's Florida hot, and they've been sitting in the center console for months. They were at his bedside table. He was all in on M&Ms.
So was Baby.
Yes, that's true. And what I'm missing most about my dad is that this philosophy of going all in didn't just apply to strange beers or macadamia nuts or M&Ms, but it applied to people too. When my dad loved you, he gave you everything he had. And that's probably his greatest legacy. He was all in on life, and he was all in on the people and the things that he loved. And when it came to loving Mimi and the kids and the grandkids and his great-grandkid, I think I saw running around earlier, Bill only knew one way to love, and that's with everything he had. And so we're so fortunate that we got to experience that love for so many years. So being the last speaker, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for celebrating his legacy. Thank you for honoring his memory. I know this isn't a toast, but I do have the podium and I'm thirsty. So please raise your glass in toasting the incomparable Billings. Here, here.
Here. Please help yourself to the food.
Here, next week.
There's a lot. Get rid of it. Also, you'll notice that there are 3x5 cards on the tables. Please help yourself to one. Bill was notorious for having a button-down shirt with a left breast pocket, and in that left breast pocket was a 3x5 card, and it was his list of things to do for that day, that week, whatever it is. So carry that 3x5 card and remember Pops the way that we remember him, and make your list.